What's up, everybody? I'm Steve and welcome back. So last week I did my top 10 favorite comedies from the 80s. I thought this week I would do my top 10 favorite horror movies from the 80s. It was such a great decade for movies. I was like 10 years old in 1983, so it's like that was definitely my formative years as far as watching horror movies. So I decided basically these aren't necessarily like the best horror movies from the 80s. I think there's a lot of really great ones in this one. There's like one that I left off my list that, check out my honorable mentions. You'll see like the first one on there will be the one that was on my top 10 list at one time. And so there's some really great ones. Obviously, leave in the comments, let me know your favorite like top 5, top 10. You'll see before you check out, before you say, what about this one, or what about that one, check that out first. All right, so before I get started, please put a thumbs up on this video. Obviously, this is all for fun. This is not something to take, like personally or anything like that. I'm not saying this is like the official list. This is just my list. Please, if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please consider doing that. I do a lot of ranking videos like this, and I love the fun I have from this. The last week's video, it got so many views and so many great comments. Okay, so at number 10, this one's from 1985. It's from director Tom Holland, and the movie is Fright Night. This one's so much fun. It's like basically like a horror comedy. And, it's starring Chris Sarandon, has a William Ragsdale, Roddy McDowall. Really great. This one I've watched since I was a kid. It's 1985, so I was like 12 years old at the time. So it's a movie that's definitely stuck with me for a long time. Okay, so at number 9, this one's from 1986 from director Fred Decker, and the movie is Night of the Creeps. This one's so much fun. It has Tom Atkins, obviously has the classic line, "Thrill Me." It has Jason Lively. He's really great in the movie. This one's like another horror comedy, basically. So I love those. Some people don't like to mix their horror with comedy. I think it definitely works. I've always loved this movie. I think it's the best movie this director's ever done. I think he only did like 3 movies altogether, but this is the first one he did. All right, so at number 8, this one's from 1981 from director Joe Dante, and the movie is The Howling. This was such a great year for werewolf movies. This one was the makeup effects were done by Rob Bottin. Obviously his teacher was Rick Baker, and they both did werewolf movies in this year, and you'll see the other one later. But Rob Bottin, he was such a young makeup effects artist at the time. So the cast in this movie were Dee Wallace, Kevin McCarthy, Slim Pickens, as John Carradine. And obviously, if you know the Carradine family, he was the father of those guys. so great. But this one, like I said, it's so many great makeup effects in this movie. I think there was another movie that came out this year that's probably a little bit better. All right, so at number 7, this one's from 1985 from director Dan O'Bannon, and the movie is The Return of the Living Dead. It's such a great zombie movie. It's basically like another horror comedy. I definitely love those movies, and I actually left some horror comedies off my list, basically, but this one's really great. This one actually has James Karen. You'll see him in like another movie later on that I'll talk about. It also has Tom Matthews. Have you ever seen Friday the 13th Part 6? He was in that movie. So this is so great. I love the humor in this movie. It's definitely like a dark humor. All right, so at number 6 from 1984, this one's directed by Wes Craven. The movie is A Nightmare on Elm Street. This one's obviously starring the iconic Robert Englund, plays Freddy. Has Heather Langenkamp. Has Johnny Depp. Has John Saxon. Such great cast. This one's my favorite from the franchise. I think this one's the most serious of any of the films in the franchise. Wes Craven directed this one, but he didn't do a lot of the others. I think he did like one other movie in the franchise. So this movie's more serious. It has some humor in the movie, some really like dark humor, but it's not like the other ones. The other ones became way more campy. All right, so number 5, this one's from 1982 from director Tobe Hooper, and the movie is Poltergeist. This one's rated PG. It's definitely not as dark as some of the other movies, but this one's so great. It's one I've watched so many times in my life. A lot of people would say that Steven Spielberg probably directed some of this movie. You've heard that for years. He was an executive producer for the movie. So that's possible. I've never really heard that necessarily turned down, but I think Tobe Hooper probably directed a lot of the movie with Spielberg kind of directing him a lot to like standing behind us over his shoulder, probably telling him to do stuff, because Spielberg actually wrote the story, so it kind of makes sense that this would be his story, that he'd want somebody not to mess it up. So as far as the cast, I mentioned James Karen earlier, was in The Return of the Living Dead. He's in this movie as well. It has Craig T. Nelson, JoBeth Williams, as Heather O'Rourke, the little girl in the movie that she passed away, I think, during the filming of like the 3rd film in this franchise. And unfortunately, I think she was only like 11 or 12 at the time. But that's very sad. But as far as this movie, it's extremely rewatchable. All right, so at number 4 for 1981, this one's directed by John Landis, and the movie is American Werewolf in London. Such a classic, and another like horror comedy, basically. Like I said, I really love those movies. This one's actually done by Rick Baker. He actually left the project for The Howling and let Rob Bottin take over for that one, so he can do this movie. And he actually won an Oscar for the werewolf transformation in this movie, which I'm sure everybody knows that pretty much already, but definitely worth noting. And obviously, this one's starring David Nodden, plays a great character in this movie. He's on the cover here, the guy in the red, and as Griffin Dunn, as Jenny Gutter, I think that's how she pronounces it. Love this movie. I love the Van Morrison music and one scene in this movie. Okay, so at number 3 for 1986, this one could probably be considered like a horror sci-fi film. It's from director James Cameron. The movie is Aliens. This one's so dark. Obviously, it brings back Sigourney Weaver playing Ripley. This one's really great. It has the late Bill Paxton. It has Michael Biehn, Lance Hendrickson. I always want to put like a D in his last name, but it's actually Henriksen. But this one's so great. Ridley Scott really loved what James Cameron did with his film. I think the first one was probably more of a straight horror film. This one's, like I said, it has like science fiction in it, but it definitely brings some horror to it too as well. It has a lot more aliens in this movie. It brings especially like the earlier shot in the movie. Okay, so at number 2 for 1982, this one's from director John Carpenter, and the movie is The Thing. Like earlier, I mentioned Rob Bottin did the Howling. He came back and did this movie and did an even better job in this movie. It's kind of a shame that he didn't get like an Oscar nomination for this movie, but it's so dark and there's so many really shocking scenes in this movie. It has Kurt Russell, Keith David. I'm not going to mention like the whole cast. There's so many great cast members in this movie, but it's so dark. It has like kind of the open ending. Basically, a lot of people kind of interpret how that ending is, and so some people don't like that. They like things to be kind of laid out and people be told how the movie's going to end, but this one kind of makes you think. Okay, so at number 1 for 1980, the director is Stanley Kubrick, and the movie is The Shining. Such a classic horror film, 45 years old now. Stephen King didn't like what Kubrick did with this story, but a director's going to do what they're going to do. Basically, they're going to put their own kind of spin on the story. So it's hard to believe that Stephen King, I think maybe he understands a little bit better now, but back then he definitely didn't understand. But this one's starring Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall has Scatman Crothers, Danny Lloyd. So dark. It has kind of an open ending to it as well. A lot of people, I've heard some people say this one's kind of a pretentious movie in some ways, or at least the ending is. I don't agree with that at all. I think it's Stanley Kubrick just putting his own take on like horror basically, but such a classic. All right, everybody, so I really appreciate you watching this video. Like I said, this is all for fun. Please leave in the comments, let me know your top 10. It doesn't have to be these, it can be completely different if you'd like to. Obviously, these are based on my age, so some people a little bit younger may have a different list. But like I said, I'm really interested in seeing what you put on your list, and everybody have a great one.